A moment of quiet on Capitol Hill, and some brash words that struck fire no one anticipated. What happens when passion meets consequence, and two leaders are left to endure the banter? This is a tale for anyone who's ever told their truth and wondered what it might unmake. Press play to dive in. Sunrise comes over Capitol Hill, but one flash of light on a phone screen promises to overshadow the day. In this story, one emerging voice of change crosses paths with one battle-hardened defender of the status quo, and some unguarded words ignite a conflict that overflows from live streams into chambers of justice. How far should passion take us before prudence takes control? When does standing up for your name make a nation stronger? And when does it open the fissures between us wider? Come with me into a tale of hope, pride, and the bitter cost of every public utterance, as we enter the drama to come of two leaders who believed they knew the power of words until it changed their lives forever. Now let's start. That morning, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez opened her phone, and her universe turned upside down. A bold CNN notification flashed on her screen like a lightning bolt. Senator John Neely Kennedy sues Representative AOC for $80 million for defamation. AOC, the youngest member in U.S. congressional history and standard-bearer for democratic socialist principles, had soared from the Bronx to Capitol Hill on pure energy, quick humor, and unyielding Green New Deal fight cry. Millions had taken up her incendiary tweets and live-stream showdowns. The same take-no-prisoners approach, however, turned her into a thorn in conservatives' sides, none more so than Kennedy. Senator John Neely Kennedy was not your average Beltway insider. Imagine a down-to-earth Louisiana raconteur who also honed his mind at Vanderbilt and Oxford. A die-hard Trump supporter, he used homespun aphorisms with sharper-than-scat timing, kitty catnip for right-wing audiences. Now, his suit wasn't merely a counterpunch. It was an attack on AOC's name, reputation, and deep pockets. The Tinder? An Instagram live broadcast where AOC accused him of stashing ill-gotten oil dough to delay clean energy bills. "He's a puppet for billionaires, selling out our future," she said to the viewers, words that went viral in seconds. Kennedy shot back, calling her allegations flat-out lies that tore his good reputation asunder, and dismissed the $80 million lawsuit. Within a matter of hours, the tale dominated every feed. Hashtags went wild. Fox News and MSNBC battled it out on the airwaves, and cable crawlers never cooled. Initially, AOC had handled the filing in the manner of another social media firestorm, but she hadn't bargained for Kennedy's meticulous arsenal of legal documents, files that might shift the turf beneath her feet. The liberal legend found herself confronted with the most vicious legal tempest of her professional life, going head-to-head with an opponent as cerebral as he was ruthless. This wasn't just about negative headlines. It challenged the very political ground AOC had established, and it could be the defining chapter in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's dynamic, drama-filled career. Before we get started, leave a comment letting us know where you're listening from, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss a tale. The storm actually began 3 weeks prior. In a flash of her characteristic spontaneity, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez picked up her phone and went live on Instagram. Over 200,000 people tuned in, comments going by the thousands. The day's subject matter: clean energy, one of the most pointed adjectives on her progressive flag. Then someone had asked why green energy legislation continued to stall in the Senate. AOC's gaze zeroed in on one name: Senator John Neely Kennedy. "Just consider Senator Kennedy," she said, her voice cutting through the air, her hand stabbing as if he were standing in front of her. "He continues to block the policies that save our planet. Why? Because his pockets are filled with oil tycoon money. This isn't politics, it's straight-up corruption." She lingered, brow raised, allowing the words to sink in. Who is Kennedy actually representing? Not the people, just the billionaires destroying our planet. "Preach and drag him," poured across the screen, encouraging her further. She capped off with a zinger. Perhaps he should change his name to Senator Big Oil to get real. Her supporters, young activists, liberal influencers, and ordinary followers, applauded the frank speech. But that biting remark was the match that ignited an insistent legal fire. Those remarks were not just personal. They were serious, untested charges, and Senator Kennedy's sharp lawyerly instincts wouldn't let it go. AOC, the firebrand from the Bronx who took down Joe Crowley in 2018, had never been afraid of trouble. Her Green New Deal had already made her a favorite target for conservatives, and her assertive social media presence made her a superstar, with millions following her every tweet. To her, this live stream was just another conversation, a convenient means of mobilizing young voters. She couldn't have imagined that it would become the epicenter of an $80 million battle. She never fantasized that those spontaneous comments would be examined word by word in a courtroom someday. Down in Louisiana, Senator John Neely Kennedy observed the furor with near frigid calm. In his Baton Rouge office, he sat back in an armchair, playing AOC's live stream video on a tablet. With 5 decades of legal and political experience, including a stint as Louisiana's state treasurer in a switch from Democrat to Republican, Kennedy wasn't the type to wilt under social media heat. He'd forged a reputation as a sharp-tongued conservative, winning crowds with homespun zingers like, "We don't take kindly to being slandered." The next day, Kennedy stood before the media at a Shreveport factory surrounded by oil field workers, a setting carefully selected. Wearing a tucked-in shirt and sporting a smudge of a smile, he explained to the reporters, "I've dedicated my entire life to serving the people. But a New York congresswoman believes she can tar me with falsehoods. I'm not upset. I just want the truth revealed. The legislation will do that," he declared. He then threatened to sue AOC for $80 million for defamation. Workers applauded, cameras popped, and reporters rushed to scribble down each syllable. Media sources went wild. Fox News flashed, "AOC sued for slandering Senator Kennedy," hosting conservative commentators who branded her an irresponsible agitator. Meanwhile, on MSNBC, the host stood up for AOC as criticizing Kennedy's energy policies alone. Although some analysts warned, without concrete evidence, she's on thin ice. AOC fired back on Twitter, "Republicans want to silence me for speaking the truth about dirty money in politics. I'm not scared." Tens of thousands liked the post, yet conservative accounts piled on with fresh criticism. What she didn't know, across the aisle, Kennedy's legal team was quietly crafting a strike she'd never see coming. A leaked internal email from her own camp was about to flip the script. Only days after his Shreveport news conference, Kennedy's $80 million suit landed in federal court. The 60-page complaint detailed defamation allegations with chilling detail, asserting AOC's live stream comments were not only false. What he filed in its wake left Washington aghast. His lawyers, led by a seasoned litigator who'd taken on media titans before, claimed AOC hadn't merely attacked a policy, she'd launched a deliberate personal assault intended to destroy his good name. And Kennedy? He's a master of taking his time. Educated at the University of Virginia and Oxford, then a successful attorney, then state treasurer of Louisiana, he'd spent half a century thinking through every move carefully. To win a defamation case against a public figure, he knew he had to prove actual malice, and he felt he had the ideal evidence. Step into the leaked email. A frustrated former staffer had slipped Kennedy's attorneys an in-house message from AOC's own staff. In it, she stated, "Kennedy is delaying the future of clean energy. We must discredit him before he causes any more harm. Find whatever information, true or not, to make him appear like he is selling out Louisiana." Those 3 words, true or not, were now the cutting edge of Kennedy's attack. The instant the lawsuit and that email got out, the media went wild. Fox News bellowed, "AOC email unveils conspiracy to defame Kennedy." Pundits labeled her a liar exposed. Breitbart published a long piece calling her out for using her perch for lies. CNN and MSNBC, typically more hospitable terrain, sounded guarded tones. One CNN commentator cautioned, "If that email's real, AOC just handed Kennedy a malice argument on a silver platter." Within her Capitol Hill office, AOC felt the floor shift. She'd endured enough before, jokes about her bartender background to angry trolls, but this leak hit hard. She huddled with her advisors. There were angry arguments. There were some who called for a rapid public apology and behind-the-scenes settlement. Not hers. Instead, she unloaded a lengthy Twitter thread. The email is cherry-picked and manipulated. Republicans want to shut me up for revealing dirty money in politics. I won't give in. The tweet gained likes quickly, but legal experts jumped all over it. She's digging her own grave, a previous prosecutor explained on MSNBC. Rather than cooling things down, she's loading Kennedy's cannon. Kennedy, however, maintained the heat constant. Speaking in New Orleans at a rally of conservative voters, he stood before them in that soothing drawl, every word calculated. I have no personal vendetta against Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. But if you get up on a public stump and tell false information that damages someone's reputation, you must be accountable. And with that, the confrontation only became fiercer. In Louisiana, we say that justice, Kennedy drawled, and the crowd went wild. Clips of his speech flew across conservative platforms like Rumble and Truth Social within minutes. For Kennedy, the lawsuit was never about the money. It was a strategic blow designed to cripple the progressive wave AOC represented. Meanwhile, back in Washington, the atmosphere in AOC's Capitol Hill office grew stifling. Placards from previous rallies, which had once been shiny markers of her rocketing trajectory, now felt like vanishing reminders of bygone times. The firebrand who had galvanized a generation now found herself standing on an isolated ledge as longtime supporters quietly edged away. The bite was not from foes, but from friends. AOC had counted on the Democratic Party, particularly its progressive flank, rallying behind as it always did, but instead it was cold. In a Financial Services Committee meeting behind closed doors, Speaker Nancy Pelosi made just a fleeting mention of the lawsuit. We need to stay focused on the party's priorities. Her steady tone was like ice water. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, cornered by the press, delivered one brief statement. The matter will be resolved through the proper legal process. Their mum was deafening. AOC was becoming a political albatross. Even other progressives started giving her space. Bernie Sanders, her mentor figure, sent out a brief tweet. We need debates based on facts and mutual respect. Squad member Ilhan Omar wrote a cryptic post about coming together. No word about AOC. Rashida Tlaib, typically the most vocal defender, avoided questions about the lawsuit during a Michigan appearance. Each of these tiny withdrawals piled upon another, creating a weighty feeling of abandonment AOC never experienced before. On Twitter, the very domain where AOC once held court unopposed, the winds were changing. Progressive influencers, formerly her most vocal supporters, were dividing. Some remained staunch in her defense, labeling the lawsuit a GOP smear effort aimed at silencing a voice that had shaken the establishment. But others, especially younger voices with huge TikTok followings, started questioning her decision-making. One of the leaked emails had been dismantled in a viral video by a leading activist that had more than 2 million views. It had questioned simply, AOC is our icon, but why did she walk into this trap? The comments were a punch to the gut. She should apologize. This was condescending. We believed her. This isn't it. The untouchable sanctity that had loomed over her was starting to fray. Attempting to take back control, AOC streamed again, just as she had done countless times before. Surrounded by a bookshelf filled with social justice literature and sporting her infamous Tax the Rich t-shirt, she addressed the crowd confidently. This lawsuit isn't just about me. It's about Republicans attempting to suppress anyone who dares to question their system. I will not genuflect. And yet, this time the vibe was different. The views rolled in, of course, but the comments hurt. Do you have any evidence? Why don't you apologize and just leave it alone? You're losing us. Devoted supporters still cheered, but now there was something new added to the mix, uncertainty. And the disintegration wasn't just confined to Twitter and live streams. In back rooms, her own camp was breaking apart. One of her top aides, one of the individuals instrumental in forming AOC's online persona, leaked to the media. We told her not to go there without proof, but she relied too heavily on her online momentum. She didn't listen. The Hill and Politico reported it, and now it wasn't just the opposition calling her out. Internal voices were stoking the flames. Meanwhile, Kennedy's staff continued to play the long game. An additional legal pleading added more internal communications from AOC's office, this time from aides to strategize about how to make the Kennedy claim go viral with the media. The emails weren't directly from AOC, but to the public and most importantly, to the court, they created an image. This wasn't a mistake. It appeared to be planning, and that was beginning to stick. Conservative artists jumped on the internet, making AOC meme material. One of the viral posts likened her to a film villain, bearing the caption, "Try to be the hero, end up shooting yourself in the foot." As Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez entered her Capitol Hill office, her once springy white sneakers felt like cement blocks. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating her face, yet the bright assurance that had made her a progressive icon seemed muted. Within weeks, Senator John Neely Kennedy's $80 million defamation lawsuit had transformed her image from unstoppable crusader to beleaguered survivor. Friends distanced themselves, headlines accumulated, and the specter of substantial legal damages hung over her like a cloud. Every morning her phone glowed with new pings, tweets, emails, team messages. The customary cheers, however, had been replaced by bitter tales. "Liar exposed," shouted Breitbart. Even the New York Times broke down her strategic missteps, and the Washington Post wondered if social media brawn was finally failing her. TikTok, which had been her playground, full of mocking edits. One video blended her live stream speech with a cartoon explosion in the caption, "Thought you were a superhero, blew yourself up instead," earning 20 million views. AOC attempted to remain calm, but the cracks appeared. Sleepless nights caught her scrolling through Twitter in her DC apartment, where anonymous trolls pierced her heart. She was our icon. Now she just talks first, thinks later. Set on fighting back, she live-streamed once more. Behind her was a Green New Deal sign as she presented herself to the camera, her voice firm but with an undertone of exhaustion. "This lawsuit is to silence me, to end the battle for environmental justice," she declared. "I will not give them victory." Rather than igniting a rally, the chat window was filled with skepticism. "Where's the evidence, Congresswoman? And why not apologize?" A few heart emojis drifted by, but disillusionment prevailed. One of the CNN analysts later encapsulated it this way: "She's attempting to make a courtroom fight a political cause célèbre, and it's not working." The stress made its way to her family as well. Tabloid journalists camped outside of her childhood residence in the Bronx, compelling her mother, Blanca, to draw the curtains closed and lock the doors. Paparazzi began camping outside her family's Bronx residence, cameras snapping even when Blanca ventured out to take out the trash. On a late-night video call, AOC attempted to be strong but couldn't mask the quake in her voice. "I'm sorry I brought the family into this," she whispered, her eyes welling up. Blanca gave a weary smile. "Mija, you always fight for what's right. Just take care this time." To protect loved ones, AOC employed private security, a cost that increased her already soaring bills. The legal bill alone had exceeded $1.5 million in just weeks. Having to sell her small DC condo, she relocated to a lower rent rental, an emotional step backward for someone once celebrated as the embodiment of anyone being able to make it. Advisors cautioned her if she lost even a portion of that $80 million judgment, bankruptcy was possible. The prospect took her breath away. In her office, longtime aides started to whisper. Somebody confided in Politico. We advised her against bringing claims without evidence, but she relied too heavily on her charm. The leak was more painful than any headline. Tactically, AOC turned to progressive allies, but received lukewarm responses. Elizabeth Warren on MSNBC uttered only, "Debate should be rooted in facts, not feelings." Conservative pundits seized on the moment. Even the progressives are distancing themselves. Before long, AOC abandoned trending, trolls sneering. Her own base won't touch her. In the stillness of time, AOC confronted a bitter truth. She'd misjudged both Senator Kennedy and the judiciary. Principle and pride prevented her from apologizing, but daily seemed to erode her reputation. Kennedy's attorneys continued to twist the screw, submitting fresh emails in which her team was planning to maximize the Kennedy narrative. Even though she hadn't written those exact words, they nourished the myth that she'd intentionally spread disinformation. Fox News, Newsmax, and numerous threads constructed the lawsuit as a lesson for liars. Viral edits likened her to Icarus, flying too near the sun, then plummeting back down. AOC continued to feel as though she was a champion of justice. But with supporters crumbling and public confidence wavering, she wondered if she could emerge from these ashes or if the fall would kill her. Meanwhile, below in Louisiana, Senator John Neely Kennedy remained as firm as a stone pillar, transforming the $80 million suit into not merely a courtroom fight, exhibiting the restraint of a veteran lawyer and the cunning of a political strategist. Kennedy leveraged the moment to put himself into the position of a champion of conservative power and justice. This wasn't merely about holding AOC accountable. It was about making a point. No one, whether famous or not, whether loud or not, is above the law. Each step he made, from courtroom filings to cable news interviews, was designed both to win the case and to influence public perception. At a packed Republican conference in Baton Rouge, Kennedy walked on stage to thunderous applause. Clad in a navy suit, red tie, and that ever-calm, composed expression, he gripped the mic and spoke with quiet confidence. "We believe in the truth," he declared, his voice ringing down the hall. "When someone attempts to tarnish your reputation with lies, you don't sit. You stand. You stand up for justice. I'm not doing this just for myself. I'm doing this for every American who's been defamed and silenced." The audience cheered and applauded, holding up signs and taking pictures. The address was broadcast live on Newsmax, and it reached millions of conservatives who perceived Kennedy as a kind of contemporary folk hero. But when a person uses her platform to harm others with falsehoods, she should face consequences. That's what honor requires. And from Baton Rouge to New York, across the airwaves, those words sounded out strongly and distinctly. But when you use your platform to spread falsehoods, you face consequences. He knew precisely what he was doing, making a lawsuit into an ethical tale. David versus Goliath, with the truth on his side. And in the courtroom, Kennedy's lawyers continued to pile up victories. The most decisive was when a federal judge rejected AOC's motion to dismiss the case. In a measured 12-page opinion, the judge said the leaked email and internal memos offered sufficient preliminary evidence of actual malice to go to trial. Conservative media jumped on. Fox News, court deals major blow to AOC, Daily Caller, Kennedy nears legal victory, 1. According to Fox commentators, one just summarized the mood. Kennedy isn't just winning, he's teaching the TikTok generation a lesson in consequences. Kennedy did not rest on the courthouse steps, however. He took the rising tide of support with him directly into the glare of the spotlight. In an emotional radio interview with Sean Hannity, he looked back on his path, small-town attorney from Zachary, Louisiana, to U.S. Senator. "I have nothing against Ms. Ocasio-Cortez herself," he declared, speaking calmly but intently. That single statement, uttered with soft-spoken conviction, was a rallying cry throughout conservative ranks. On Truth Social, Rumble, and right-wing bulletin boards, it was made into headlines, banners, and memes announcing Senator John Neely Kennedy as a truth teller, a champion of honor in a time of turbulence. Republican leaders soon flocked to his side. Senator Ted Cruz, addressing a crowd that was on its feet in Texas, labeled Kennedy a conservative warrior who knows how to use the law to defend what's right. Even normally reserved Mitch McConnell spoke out at a press conference. Senator Kennedy's lawsuit reminds us all, words have power and they carry consequences. Their backing took Kennedy well beyond one courtroom battle. His suit became a cause célèbre, a more general blow against what conservatives termed irresponsible progressivism. As he entered a tumultuous election season, Kennedy was rapidly emerging as a poster child for Republican strength and restraint. Back home in Louisiana, Kennedy's actions were equally calculated. He had a meet-and-greet event at an oil refinery in Lake Charles, positioning himself squarely among the very workers AOC had, in his opinion, insulted. Amidst men and women in orange jumpsuits, he pointed at them and said, "Miss Ocasio-Cortez wants to speak about how I'm selling out the people. These people here, these hard-working Louisianans, are who I fight for. I won't allow anyone to besmirch them or me." The audience applauded, fists raised in support. Images from the event went viral on conservative media, solidifying Kennedy's reputation as a working-class champion, not only of himself but of the working man. AOC's world, meanwhile, continued to unravel. Where Kennedy seemed serene and unflappable, She seemed beset and more reactive. She tweeted tweet after tweet, deeming the lawsuit political theater, insisting that her supporters speak out. But the contrast was stark and debilitating. Kennedy never once stooped to personal attacks. He maintained a tone of principle and responsibility. That self-control paid off, as National Review accurately summarized in a scorching editorial. Kennedy is playing chess while AOC is playing checkers, and she lost with her first move. The momentum didn't let up. Kennedy was asked to be the keynote speaker at a prominent conservative conference in Florida. When he came out on stage, the crowd stood for a standing ovation lasting over 2 minutes. His combination of Southern hospitality and incisive legal analysis resonated. Within weeks, he was appearing regularly on conservative stalwarts, Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, Mark Levin, where he talked not only of the lawsuit, but of the higher principle at stake. In politics, your word is your bond. If we stop defending truth, what's left? It was no longer about a defamation case. It had grown much larger. These high-profile speeches didn't merely raise Senator John Neely Kennedy's public profile. They represented a turning point in his political ascent. Within his own party, whispers of future leadership opportunities began to buzz. Strategists were speculating about his name as a potential chair for main committees, and even rumors of a possible presidential ticket one day weren't unthinkable. Among Republicans, Kennedy had emerged as a symbol, a man who stood up to cancel culture. On sites such as Parler and Getter, Kennedy's image decorated millions of user-generated graphics, with captions such as "Don't mess with Kennedy" or "One man, no fear." One meme of him standing tall in a courtroom with AOC next to him, head bowed, was posted tens of thousands of times. But it wasn't solely a victory for Kennedy. It was a biting reprimand to the progressive movement itself. AOC, the once beating heart of the movement, now appeared wounded and exposed. As the media firestorm gradually simmered down, the lasting implications became clear. The case had moved far beyond two names in a court. It altered the way Americans perceived the boundaries of political speech, accountability, and the naked might of digital platforms. For Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the professional and personal price was devastating. Under increasing scrutiny by the media, her party, and even from within her own ranks, she made a decision that was painful to make: to leave her leadership position on the House Financial Services Committee. In a brief Instagram post, she said, "I need to concentrate on my constituents and face the legal battles in front of us. Thank you for being understanding." Despite her attempt at maintaining a positive tone, the majority recognized the action for what it was: an acknowledgement of defeat. Political observers around the board, from CNN to The Atlantic, designated the moment as the end of an era. The former fiery congresswoman from the Bronx, who had electrified the left base and pulled the Democratic Party in its direction, remained in her seat, but the glitter was off. Her own financial position had worsened as well. Legal expenses had passed $2.5 million, prompting her to sell out her Bronx apartment and take loans from close friends. Financial analysts cautioned, if Kennedy won even a portion of the $80 million judgment, it would be financially devastating. As Bloomberg tersely headlined it, AOC, from working-class icon to facing bankruptcy over a live stream. The woman who was once the face of possibility now confronted a hard truth. Her political aspiration derailed not by scandal, but by one moment of untempered passion on social media. The irony wasn't missed on right-wing pundits. Sites like the Daily Wire wrote derisive headlines like, "From tax the rich to court crushed," tracing a stark line from AOC's formerly ardent slogans to her presently humbled reality. But aside from the schadenfreude, the effect on the progressive cause was genuine and enduring. AOC's fall broke the facade of her as a touchy subject. All at once, social media boldness, formerly political brilliance, seemed like rashness. Progressive organizations such as the Sunrise Movement and Justice Democrats started questioning openly the approach of taking shots on adversaries through live streams and viral moments. During a New York political seminar for rising influencers, the most important session was the AOC lesson: balancing boldness with legal accountability. An event organizer informed The Intercept, "AOC inspired us, but she's also a cautionary tale. Social media isn't a free-for-all anymore. As AOC was cleaning up the wreckage, John Neely Kennedy was riding high on his political tide. The lawsuit had turned him from a well-respected senator into a cause célèbre, a hero for those who felt that cancel culture had crossed the line. From CPAC main stages to private fundraisers in Texas, Kennedy was omnipresent, giving speeches, raking in millions, and reinforcing an unremitting message. Conservatives can push back and prevail by employing the very system they're repeatedly said to be rebelling against. As the Wall Street Journal observed in a biting editorial, Kennedy turned a personal legal dispute into a national campaign, showing that accountability doesn't always need a hashtag. It can come from a courtroom. In Louisiana, Kennedy was greeted as a hometown hero. At oil refineries and community centers, workers shook his hand and thanked him. One Lake Charles man said, "He stood up for us when we were muddied. He's our man." Even Kennedy's squeaky clean victory came at a cost. The suit did not only quiet AOC, it dug deeper trenches in a polarized political terrain that was already there. What began as a war of words had escalated to a war of ideologies. Progressivism versus conservatism, social media versus the law, emotion versus evidence. Some worried about the ripple effect. In The New Yorker, one editorial cautioned, "When politicians sue one another over words, it establishes a precarious precedent. We don't only lose people, we lose room for open discussion." Others, even among Kennedy's constituency, started wondering about the difference between accountability and overreach. Was this a principled position or a political wrecking ball? The case's legacy lived far beyond the courtroom. In Washington, Republican and Democratic lawmakers quietly started bringing in legal consultants to vet their tweets. A DC risk assessment firm saw 30% more business as anxious politicians avoided the AOC trap. An anonymous Democratic senator explained to Politico, "After AOC, nobody wants to be the next headline because of a tweet. Even influencers, once they swapped barbs with reckless abandon in the cause of activism, began self-censoring. The days of unfettered political flame-throwing on social media were ending, making way for something icy, still, and much more circumspect." The global ripple from the Kennedy versus AOC case was unmistakable. Top international dailies, from Britain's The Times to France's Le Monde, presented it as something larger than a country domestic spat. It was, in their view, a disquieting mirror of America's democracy going in the wrong direction. It was concisely put by a British reporter, "AOC and Kennedy are two sides of the same coin. Polarization has turned U.S. politics into an unforgiving game of courtroom gladiatorship." Even in Latin America, where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had once been celebrated as a beacon of hope, the reaction was one of sobering disappointment. In Brazil, an activist who used to print out her speeches on flyers for local climate marches spoke to El País. "We admired her fire, her courage, but now she's a lesson. Passion must never outrun judgment." The $80 million lawsuit between Senator John Neely Kennedy and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez didn't just leave behind a winner and a loser. It left behind a warning. AOC, one-time symbol of a bold, digitally native progressive movement, was victimized by the very tools that created her. One live stream, unscripted, impassioned, paired with a leaked email, toppled a brand that had once appeared bulletproof. Her descent from grace, from ascendant political icon to debt-troubled cautionary tale, was a painful reminder. One untested claim, shared with certainty, can unmake years of trust. While that was happening, Kennedy, the master strategist with the patience of a saint, made the courtroom his battlefield. He employed law, not indignation, to battle back. And in the process, he emerged as a contemporary conservative icon. But even his triumph was expensive. Instead of closing gaps, it opened them. Political dialogue turned nastier, not cleaner. Public trust continued to dwindle. This was not a headline battle between two politicians. It was a mirror held up to the state of the American soul today. Divided, boisterous, defensive, and perilously dependent on unmoderated platforms. Ultimately, AOC's progressive vision, clean energy, economic justice, bold reform, were eclipsed by one unsubstantiated claim and a single email sentence. True or not, it cost her $25 million in lawyers' fees, her Bronx apartment, some important allies, and her position of leadership. The Kennedy AOC libel trial became more than a political soap opera. It became a contemporary fable about speech, power, and responsibility in the age of the internet. And its message? In a world where every word rings louder than ever before, truth still counts, and so does how we use it. Even in triumph, John Neely Kennedy left behind a bittersweet legacy. Yes, he stood up for his name and reputation, but he also contributed to pushing the country further down the path of polarization by transforming what could have been a political exchange into a war in the courtroom. It's a question we should all ask ourselves. In a nation that keeps free speech close to its heart, are we still exercising it wisely? Words can hurt, and in the era of the digital age, they travel faster and bite harder than they ever have. That's why we need to safeguard the right to speak and not forget the responsibility to speak wisely. Argue heatedly, express your convictions, but base your arguments on fact, talk respectfully, and let reason overwhelm emotion. Otherwise, we can all get caught in the lawsuits of life, fights that could have been avoided with a little less heat and a little more thought. Thanks so much for watching. If tales such as these are your thing, real individuals, real power, high drama stakes, be sure to click that subscribe button so that you don't miss the next installment. We'll catch you in the next story.